Facebook just made the real Apple Vision.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the All Future Podcast. Glad you're with us. Glad you're subscribing. Glad you're watching. Guys, we're coming in hot today. Today. Just finished watching the Meta AR AI product event. I don't know what they call this thing, but it's all kinds. It's basically, our normal lead for the podcast here, where we're like, we talk about this and this and this. Like Facebook just listed all those things, so we got to talk about it.
We do.
Yeah. So lots of stuff coming in. I think probably the coolest thing is this Orion device. I think we'll probably hit that a lot. Also have some nice quality of life, cool improvements to these bad boys, the Meta Ray-Bans, some new stuff with the Quest, some new generative AI stuff built into Meta's software empire here. So yeah, Ryan, what's up, man? What's going on?
Well, first, Meta talked about their Orion headset, which barely looks like a headset. I think it looks a lot better than the spectacles that we've seen from Snap. Did you see those?
Yeah.
The AR thing with the very wide design, and they're quite big all down the strip there. Yeah, not the best design-wise. And also Snap, I feel skeptical on, but I feel the same way I guess I felt about Meta with going into AR and VR maybe a couple years ago. Now I'm a little more on board. Maybe Snap will convince us. But in any case, for now, the Orion is Meta's vision of the future and where AR stuff is going to go. And essentially, it's that AR headset that we actually would use because it's just a pair of glasses. They look quite good. They almost look like normal glasses, like you can barely tell unless you're looking at the lenses because it is projecting onto them. But essentially, this is a prototype. This is their development thing of where this could go in the future. For now, they wanted it to come out, but it's too expensive for them to actually release into a product. And they said they are working with about 1,000 prototypes internally. So it's kind of a development device and just a vision of where this stuff can go in the future. But it uses a ton of great technology, like hand tracking. You can do that as your input, and it's projecting onto your environment, but you're seeing the environment for real, as opposed to something like the Apple Vision, where it's all pass-through related. Or there's a band for inputs. They say it has about 70 degrees of a field of view. It has ULEDs inside of the lenses, 7 cameras and sensors around it, all sorts of AI stuff. People who have used it said the quality isn't good enough for something like a movie. You wouldn't want to sit there and watch a movie like you would in an Apple Vision or something. But some of the very cool things are all of that real life AR, AI-driven stuff. Like he looks at a table with a bunch of ingredients and says, make me a smoothie recipe with what I have, and it does that for you.
Yeah. This is the thing that we have talked about forever on this podcast. And by forever, I mean whatever the 9 months we've been making this podcast. But it's the pair of glasses AR computer thing. I think it does a few things really smartly. And to your point, or to the thing you pointed out, yeah, this is a prototype. They're not selling this thing.
Yeah.
Because I think we've also talked about this podcast many times. The technology is there. The money is just too much right now. It just costs too much to make them. Here's where I think this is different from some of the other things we've talked about or seen, right? Is that Facebook's made 1,000 of these things. And so it's not a lab demo. It's not some engineering kind of thing that they're just testing it out. These things look like a product.
Yeah.
And I think more importantly, they let a bunch of journalists and influencers and people come and use them. So that shows that, hey, this isn't something we're just keeping internal. This is a thing we want to make.
Yeah.
And I think it does a few things very smartly. And I believe it's the Verge video that has Mark Zuckerberg talking to a Verge journalist about using them and stuff like that. And I think the journalist actually brings this up, though, and I think it's absolutely true, is that this is the phone replacement dream that some people have. And especially people who do not work for Apple. If you're Facebook, right, smartphones are gone, man. Facebook is never going to develop a phone that's going to outsell an iPhone. That's just not happening.
Yeah.
So what you got to do is you got to go to the next thing. And that's what this kind of is, man. That's what this kind of is. So the actual system, which I thought was neat, is that it's the glasses. And then with the glasses, you have a wristband that helps with kind of almost like how the Apple Watch, how you can double tap and do things.
Yeah.
So it's getting those kind of sensors, which I like. Which we've talked about interfaces, say like the Vision Pro, right? And I know the Vision Pro has the cameras that'll kind of see the movements down here, but it can get a little weird, know. And I think Facebook specifically is doing things that show that, oh, this is better than the way the Vision Pro does it. If you see like there's a demo with like, or a shot of like Zuckerberg on a couch and his hands like way back here, this would be like, outside kind of camera range. And he's like just tapping or doing things and he's just relaxed and it's, acting interfacing with the glasses. The glasses also don't pair to a phone, just to kind of a, a hockey puck looking computer thing you carry in your pocket, which I think is that missing kind of piece to the whole system. So it goes, oh, like we don't need to put all of this on your face, which is what the Vision Pro does, and we don't need a phone to make it work because what we're going for is beyond phones. So that's what this thing is. So for me, I'm excited about this. This is kind of what we've always talked about in making. This is still years away from being cheap enough for people to buy. But I'm excited. I know people who have used it. They're excited about it. So I think it's pretty cool.
Is that hockey puck thing, is it wireless or is it wired?
It seemed wireless what it appeared to be in the demo. I'd have to go back and look, but I didn't see any kind of cabling on it or anything. So I think the idea is you just carry that in your pocket. And then your screen is essentially what's in the glasses.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. This whole thing is just, exactly what we've been talking about. I think a lot of the Apple Vision stuff that I've talked about as someone who is using it, it's like, this will be awesome for the average public once it's in a pair of glasses. When it's this big headset on your face, it's for a specific type of person that is going to be willing to buy this and actually use it in certain environments. And you're not going to want to go out in the world and use your Apple Vision versus these glasses. You absolutely put them on. So I guess a little bit of a humble brag. I was just in Italy.
I was just in Italy playing in my band with Jeff Goldblum. It was super cool.
This is true. I played 2 shows with Jeff Goldblum in Florence, and so
I'm making fun of you, but it is actually pretty cool.
Thanks. So I bought these are the Meta Ray-Bans. I bought them right before going because I wanted to try them out on the trip, and they're super cool. So I used a lot of what I used was the taking photos. I don't know if that sound will come through. The sound design's really cool. Taking photos and taking videos with this. It can take up to 3 minutes. So I took videos, which I'll throw some up here, like all around Florence, all around Venice, and on stage even behind the drums. And it's really cool because especially that kind of view, the only way I could get that in the past is putting a GoPro on my head. And then everybody in the audience is like, what is that guy doing on the drums?
You nerd.
Yeah. And here the only thing is you have this light. So from the audience, still that is kind of not easy to see.
That's probably almost invisible. And they see it, it looks like it's just part of the show or something. Yeah.
And walking around it had a certain amount of, I was more engaged with my environment, but knowing that I'm also filming it, which was kind of cool, instead of being through a phone. There's a certain detached level of it. And then I can also be walking and just say, hey, Meta, take a photo. And then just now, I'm still talking. That's why it's confusing. But it takes it very quickly when you give that voice command. And then I was in front of like historic buildings and I would ask it a question. And this is something that is getting better for these glasses specifically. We were kind of expecting an update to the hardware here. And technically they are releasing some new versions of it, but nothing is changing with the hardware for the Meta Ray-Bans. But they did talk about some software features they're adding for these glasses, which I'm excited about, having used it recently. It's going to get better at visual stuff and understanding it. I think it's going to be able to do live language translation and stuff like that. So yeah, they also, in addition to showing us these Orion glasses, they're going, okay, the current glasses you can get, we're adding a bunch of AI features.
And this kind of trip you just went on is probably almost the perfect use case for these things, right? Like you're traveling, you don't want to be pulling out your phone a lot. You do need, sometimes when you want to take a picture, but you don't need like a high 48 megapixel photo. You're just taking a picture of your hotel room number or something, right? Like that type of thing, right? It's very non-intrusive. You can just do it. And here's a question for you. And I don't know the answer to this. We haven't talked about this off camera or anything. Did you bring your Vision Pro at all on this trip?
I actually did not.
That's
because I was traveling next to someone.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's gonna be odd. I don't really find myself using it. And also I was packed enough. I had enough stuff. I didn't want to add another piece. I just used an iPad this trip, so I did not bring the Apple Vision on these flights.
Look, if there's any more damning evidence that Apple has maybe missed the mark on this thing, is that you, the noted Apple Vision Pro user on this podcast, right? You're choosing to bring Meta products with you when you go do things instead of the Apple stuff. And it becomes almost shocking. If you would have asked me, like, what hardware will I be into for AR stuff, like 2 years ago, whatever Apple makes is probably going to be good. But it seems like they're just not in a game with this in the way that people are excited about.
Yeah. And
I think especially at the probably the main part of this event really are maybe the thing that is actually going to have the most impact. They talked about the new Quest lineup, and man, I'd say that they directly took shots at Apple on this thing in some ways.
Yeah.
One, they demoed the desktop connection to Windows 11 and showing all these screens and all this kind of stuff. I'm like,
they basically did the exact interface too, where you put on the headset, you look down at the window and press a button, and then it's all of a sudden mirroring it.
Yeah.
They and multiple windows, which is like something that Apple has added in Vision Pro 2.
Yeah.
It wasn't even available at launch.
And I get that everything about the hardware in the Vision Pro is better, right? Every single thing about it.
Yeah.
But that's not going to matter, man. Like, that's not going to matter because I think everything that Meta is doing here is good enough. It's good enough for people to buy it. So this new Quest lineup, the Meta Quest 3S, which has been leaked a long time ago. We talked about this on the podcast, so everyone knew this was coming. Essentially, the more affordable version, and I guess it's starting at $299. So wow, that's way cheaper than obviously the Vision Pro.
Is that 11 or 12 Vision Pros?
Yeah, exactly.
Or 11 of 12 Meta Quest 3Ss for one Vision Pro.
Yeah, and you're doing I'm pulling out a number from the air, but maybe 80% of the stuff you can do with the Vision Pro for a tenth of the cost. You're getting an 80% solution. That's good math, right?
Yeah.
That's good math. And so I think this is also showing, I think you kind of see it in how Mark Zuckerberg is actually up there giving the presentation and all that. Everyone knows that this dude's all about the metaverse and all this kind. He renamed the damn company that, right? So he's all into that, and they've spent tens of billions of dollars on it. And I think now he's finally able to go, look, man, we've made something good. We're proud of this. This is cool. Come check this stuff out. And obviously the Quest is probably the most popular AR VR thing in existence, you know, and whatever that means, which still means it's not that popular.
Yeah.
But this stuff starts to look more and more attractive when you start adding in the AR stuff. You got the improved Llama large language model in there doing stuff with it. And it looks pretty good as a competitive proposition next to the Vision Pro.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've done such a good job with things like the Meta Ray-Bans, like you were saying. I mean, this is the case for them. It's basically a Ray-Bans case.
It looks exactly like a Ray-Bans
you open
case,
it, and this is a charging case too with USB-C in the bottom. So you're talking about, especially a future vision of like the Orion, bringing this on your trip as opposed to the Apple Vision, which I have a big case for it. It's such a big difference, and this is so much easier. And also one of those things that's non-obtrusive. I was walking around and nobody knew I'm wearing them. There is a little bit of the awkwardness once people know that you're wearing them. Like, are you filming right now?
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, once I show them, it has a light, and if I block the light, it will not take video.
Yeah.
Once I show people that, then they're more comfortable knowing at least they can tell if I'm videoing or not. But in any case, yeah, they're very cool. They're non-obtrusive. Most people don't know you're wearing them. And the Orion is the vision of taking that level of thing and adding all the functionality of something like an Apple Vision. And I'm definitely very excited about it, and also excited that for $300 you can get almost a good enough headset that's almost as good as the Quest 3 as it has been for the past couple years. Just a couple reduced features like storage, and I think the displays have been swapped for a different type of display that's not as good and not quite as high resolution. So that will be a miss in some ways, but $300 for a very functional VR headset.
That's the price point you need to be at on these things. And regardless of whether you can hate Meta and be like, oh, I want the Vision Pro so much better, Apple's better, whatever. Just introducing more of these products into the world is good for the Vision Pro too. It's good to have AR stuff in the world, I think, if you're making these products. Now, we can talk about whether it's good to be walking around as they open these up with, a couple cameras sitting on your face all the time and what that means.
Yeah.
Because you talked about, if you block the light, it doesn't record, all this kind of stuff. Everything's hackable.
Yeah.
Like
I was thinking you could probably get like the right kind of tint for it to where people can't see it, but it thinks it's seeing out nothing and it's blocked. You could probably,
and then on the software side, you could do this. It's been a long time since I worked at the NSA, but I imagine those guys were like, oh, hell yeah. Like they're probably giving these as gifts to Chinese diplomats right now and stuff, right? Like it's like, oh yeah, I'm sure this is going to, so there's that entire conversation about the privacy of everything and what's the balance of there and how that makes sense. But man, what a cool way to use these. Like you're talking about traveling, right? And you could see an object and go, hey, what is that? Tell me about that.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's awesome. And I think, look, the big headline here, as I think, is that, look, Facebook is bringing it. Like they've got a lot of money to burn. They have burned a lot of money on this stuff. And they're like, hey, we're in this game, man. This is what we want to make. This is what we're excited about. And Zuckerberg probably hates Facebook at this point. He's like, this is a tarnished brand. I don't want it. I don't care about any of this stuff. I'm going to the future, baby. And the future is this AR metaverse stuff.
Yeah, so on the AI side of things specifically, though, they are adding some image generation into Instagram and Facebook. That looks... The description is quite extensive and kind of funny sounding. There's imagined for you content, which can incorporate your face into made up scenarios like an enchanted realm. And you can do things like imagine yourself as a video game character or astronaut. And the feature is in testing for now, but basically this kind of looks similar to like the Genmoji thing we're seeing from Apple, just coming built into Instagram and Facebook. We're going to have this kind of more playful image generation available across the board.
Yeah, it all looks like it's the standard DALL-E kind of model image generation, which all looks like, I don't know, almost like a Pixar film or something. Yeah. It has a smoothness to it. It's not nearly as good as some of these other models that can make like super great photorealistic stuff like the Stable Diffusion side and Midjourney and stuff like that. But like having this built in is going to be interesting, and they're just going to keep expanding this, right? Because people love this stuff, man. People like it's so funny because we're in a bubble, man. We're in a hardcore bubble. Especially being, working in the arts and stuff, and everyone's like, AI garbage, get it out of here. Here's the thing, though, man. I got a weird example. So I love like niche Reddit boards about stuff that I'm just like, let me just see what's going on with that, right? I'm on the Conan the Barbarian Reddit board, man. I always loved that movie. I love the old stories, the comics, whatever. I'm into it, right? And someone posted an image that I instantly recognized it as an AI image because, I see so much of it, right?
Yeah.
It's getting upvoted to the moon. People love it, right? And the next image that people posted was like this beautiful like 1970s painting of Conan the Barbarian, which got like a quarter of the upvotes, right? And then you actually go into the comments and people are like, oh, this is AI garbage, this is AI garbage. I'm like, no one's going to the comments to see that, man. They're just seeing that image going, that's a cool image, they're upvoting it. Yeah. You see this already across Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. Like no one cares that a human didn't make this stuff. So they're absolutely going to keep integrating this into their products. YouTube just announced that they're going to add video image generation into shorts. So like people are just going to be able to make fake AI videos built into their shorts, which is wild. So yeah, this stuff is coming. So this is where I'm not as excited about this stuff, but this is what people want, man. And these companies' jobs are to give people what they want. So.
And what they'll keep buying and what can keep generating lots of revenue.
I guess that's actually what these companies' jobs are, is to generate revenue. And they do that by suckering people into buying this stuff. So
I do find it interesting because the difference between Apple and Meta is the data collection side of things and building an actual AI model. Apple is doing that, but like Llama is now doing this image generation stuff, and that's what's powering like the Meta glasses and these future products, and they're building more and more AI features into the Meta Quest, which comes in at $300. And I'm curious, I wonder if the hardware, if they're still profiting a lot on $300, or if it doesn't matter as much to them because it's now part of this ecosystem here for collecting stuff.
Absolutely. Right? That's how they can make stuff much cheaper than Apple can. Yeah. Right? Like it's like, we're going to make so much money gathering data from these people. Especially, look, here's the other part of this, is Apple adding the force apps to ask to allow to track thing decimated ad revenue for these companies. Like in a massive way, billions of dollars that they were making, they have lost. Companies like Facebook and Snap in particular, super hard hit by this.
Yeah.
Because their most popular version of their software and products are running on Apple hardware.
Mm-hmm.
And especially their most lucrative, because you can talk about, the install base for Android is bigger, blah, blah, blah. It costs nothing to advertise to an Android person. It's much more expensive to advertise to an iPhone owner because they're more likely to spend money on expensive things, right? So when they cut all that out, it really hurt these companies. So if you are Meta, and maybe and cool, we're making AR, people are going to love it, it's a great product. Oh, also, we won't block our own ad tracking on it. So yeah, like that's absolutely on their radar and something they're thinking about.
Yeah, and that's why we see the next products from Apple always being just like, I don't know, a little different than this. And you're like, why is the Apple Vision $3,500 versus the Quest 3S is $300? There's all the hardware differences and Apple not wanting to make their first VR headset be something that's cheaper. But there's also just that other angle, and these other angles involved with data collection and ads and all that stuff, which is the real business powering all this stuff at the lower end, or at the base, I guess. So that's part of why I think we're seeing confusion over at Apple right now, in a sense, or products that we're kind of going, really? Are we sure about that? And one of those is the iPad robot, or whatever they're calling this.
This thing again. This thing haunts me all the time.
But apparently it's actually like a priority at them right now. It's codenamed J595 internally, and they've described it as an iPad-like device with a robotic arm. Could come as soon as 2026 at about a $1,000 price tag. And this is a big like Apple Intelligence play as like your home hub that you would have. I'm sure they'll convince us why we need this and to buy it, but it's just funny to see like that's the leaks we're getting from Apple, and then you're seeing the Orion headset demoed by Meta on the other side.
Yeah, and Apple very famously doesn't show products that they're not going to sell.
Yeah.
Whereas other companies less concerned with that. We've talked about this for a while though, like that this having that home Apple Intelligence Hub is gonna be a thing. Like it's definitely gonna be a thing, and I do like this idea of that. I don't like the robotic arm thing. Kind of rumor of it seems weird to me. I'm like, I don't see a whole lot of functionality in that, and how much cost is that going to add to it?
Yeah,
maybe Apple's got a cool idea that what it's going to be able to do, but I'm like, yeah, to make that effective. Let's say we always use that example of like the kitchen AI machine. That arm's going to have to be able to like go across the room, man. Right? Like if it's just sitting on the countertop, it can kind of like extend out 3 feet, if that, 1.5 feet or something.
Yeah.
Like, what's the functionality going to be with that? Either way, though, I think we're both on record that we're going to buy this thing. So I want to be clear about that. We're definitely going to buy it, but I'm just curious to see what the final form factor is going to be. It wouldn't surprise me if the whole robotic rumor of it all kind of falls by the wayside.
Yeah. I think the big future product that people are most excited about, or would actually be most excited about, is an Apple Glasses, and Facebook or Meta just basically announced that. But one feature that Apple is pushing in software soon with Apple Intelligence is something they very much demoed at the iPhone 16 event, which is you take the camera shutter button, press and hold, and then you get into Apple Intelligence visual stuff. And that is, I think, arguably a peek at a future with glasses, because it's this visual intelligence. It's understanding your environment, and they can be absolutely developing this system to make it great based on people's iPhones. And then in the future, they get to some glasses that you're wearing, and you ask it a question about your environment, and it completely understands.
Yeah, for sure. And that's always the thing. Like, we talk about this a lot with like the stuff like this, these kind of dedicated standalone devices. It's like, oh, well, my phone can do all this already. Like this thing has to offer a lot more benefit than just being cool. Like it's gotta be, one more rung up on the, I want this ladder for people to buy it, because they do go, oh, well, I can, what are these, $300? What is retail? Yeah. So so it's like, oh, well, do I need to spend that $300? Or guess what? I've got this dedicated button on the thing I already paid $1,000 for. That's maybe the way to go.
Yeah. And that's another reason why we're seeing potentially more confusion at Apple with them filing another patent for a foldable phone. And I could list the number, but it's extremely long. It's just detailing an outer display for a foldable, as well as the internal ones. And there's also apparently patents for trifold on a foldable. I basically think they're just experimenting with everything possible here and patenting things.
Yeah, that's what we talked about some time. Like an Apple patent is meaningless to predict what products they're going to make. Apple patents so many things, has patented crazy stuff. I mean, go look through those MacBooks that have touchscreen keyboards on them. It's all wild stuff. Keep going back, right? Like Apple's patenting like weird iPad devices during like the Apple IIc era. Like they're just like all these big companies, they have to protect their development, and all these companies, including Apple, have been shaken down by these patent troll people that just patent random things and say you're violating my patent, even though they've never made a viable product with that patent. So yeah, like that's what this is. This is more of that. And like when you read this patent, it's like, oh, a foldable phone with a screen on the outside. I'm like, you mean the Z Flip? Because that's a thing. We can buy that already. But Apple is patenting a specific implementation of that, so that they can go, oh, well, we also have a patent on this. Like we invented it too, or whatever, so.
Yeah, so this week, that Meta event was overall pretty exciting. I was expecting some Ray-Bans improvements to the hardware, but we're just getting some software improvements, which is good news. If you already have those, you don't have the need to upgrade. And they've gone cheaper on the AR side of things, so they really are taking over this market. But I'm curious to see how long it takes for them to bring the Orion thing, in whatever form factor that comes in, to market, and then when Apple can make their version, which will likely be Apple Sapphire. I'm excited to see it.
We'll see.